Imagine for a quiet moment that before anyone ever gave you a name, before life placed fear or heavy expectations on your shoulders, you came into this world already whole. I say this not to comfort you, but to remind you of a truth older than memory and deeper than any wound you have carried. From the very beginning, you were woven with peace. Not something given later, but something flowing within the structure of your spirit, like an original stream. I have met many people in my life. People who work endlessly to prove that they are worthy, that they are good enough, strong enough, capable enough. And then, in still moments of conversation, they break down in tears. Not because they are tired, but because somewhere deep inside they carry a quiet doubt. Was I really created for peace, or must I fight for it? Every time I witness this, I see a layer of dust settling over a light that was never truly lost. When people forget that light, they search outside for something that has been within them since the beginning. If you sit in silence for a moment, you can feel a very gentle movement in the deepest part of yourself. A calm breath, an invisible calling. It is a quiet pattern, a silent design that has always lived inside you, not out in the world. It does not judge, does not demand, does not ask you to become someone else. It simply waits to be recognized. Like the sun that never needs to be turned on it, only needs the clouds to part so that its light can return. You do not have to summon it. You only need to remember that it has never left. And if you have ever felt yourself stumbling, losing direction, or carrying a weight you cannot name, I want you to know this. You did not begin from lack. The world may have taught you to chase, to compete, to prove, but the soul has no knowledge of such things. The soul only knows the wholeness it was given from its very first breath. Everything that worries you today is only a thin layer of smoke covering the vast sky already within you. When I say that you are made of peace, I am not speaking of a fragile emotion. I am speaking of a nature, a principle, a foundation woven into the structure of your spirit, and no matter how life turns, it remains there like a quiet river holding you from beneath. And from that place you will find not only peace, but meaning, direction, healing, and hope for the days when you feel you cannot stand anymore. You do not need to create peace. You only need to return to it. Because it was the first thing given to you, and it is the last thing that remains untouched within you no matter what has happened. When you begin to realize that wholeness is not something you must search for, but something you have carried from the beginning, a very subtle shift happens. It is like entering a dark room after a long time and opening the curtain just a little. Even a thin line of light is enough to help you see the shape of everything inside again. Peace, meaning, and the direction of your life are the same. They do not disappear. You have simply been standing with your back to the light for too long. And when you turn around, everything becomes clearer than you expect. I often tell those who feel overwhelmed that every person carries a spiritual compass. Not a compass made of metal, but something deeper, something guided by honesty and stillness. When you live in alignment with your inner truth, that compass points to only one place, the place of peace. Not the fragile kind of peace, the kind that feels quiet on the outside while chaos still stirs inside, but the deep stability that remains calm, like a lake whose surface may ripple, yet whose depths stay untouched. The inner pattern within you never stops. It does not withdraw its guidance just because you feel lost. It does not grow angry because you forgot it for years. It simply stays patient and steady with a kind of love that needs no recognition. It stands at the center of your being and waits for you to return. The moment you listen, you realize that clarity does not come from effort. It comes from remembering. Many people tell me they feel as if they are living in a fog of demands, responsibilities, and expectations. They chase what others want from them until they can no longer hear their own voice. And when I ask them when they last listened to themselves, they become silent. Not because they refuse to answer, but because they truly cannot recall. You may have found yourself in that place too, a place where you do so much yet have no sense of where you are going. But here is something remarkable. The inner pattern is not erased just because you forget it for a while. It is not a skill to train, not a talent to develop, not a reward given to those who succeed. It is like the background melody that has always played in your soul. Even if you stand in the noise of the city or run through the pressure of daily life, that melody continues. All you need to do is stop and the sound becomes clear again. You do not need to ask others who you are. You only need to ask yourself what inside you has never been taken away. That answer will lead you in the right direction. This is why I believe that God does not place your purpose in the hands of others to pass down to you. He places it inside you, because only you carry the experiences, the pain, the fragments, the gifts, and the qualities needed to understand your path. No one else has enough of the clues to decide it for you. Many people ask me how to distinguish the voice of fear from the voice of the inner pattern. I tell them that the voice of fear is always urgent and loud. It makes you feel lacking. It convinces you that if you do not act now, everything will fall apart. But the voice of the inner pattern, the voice of peace, never pushes you. It invites you. It does not urge you to run. It quietly tells you to stop and remember who you are. That inner voice often speaks so softly that you must be still to hear it. When you are torn between two choices, the voice of fear is usually stronger. But the voice of truth is steadier. It is never in a hurry. It knows you will return. It only needs you to look at it once with honesty. And that single moment is often enough to make you unable to go back to the way you lived before. When you begin to listen to the inner pattern, you no longer live like someone begging for direction. You live like someone who has the right to choose. And this is where healing begins. Healing is not trying to forget your pain. It is remembering who you were before the pain stepped into your life. When you stand in that place, your direction appears naturally, like the sunrise. No forcing, no striving, no pressure, only receiving. Some people ask me if they can ever lose their inner pattern. I tell them no. The only thing you can lose is the belief that you have it. But the pattern itself remains untouched. It does not break. It does not disappear. It is not erased by time. It is your essence. It is the part of you the world cannot reach. No matter how life changes, you carry within you a direction that cannot be blown away by any wind. And I want you to ask yourself something, because it matters more than you think. How long has it been since you last asked what truly matters to you? This question is not meant to be answered quickly. It is meant to remind you that you still have a center, a light, a voice waiting for you to trust it again. Thank you for pausing long enough to hear your own story through these words. There is something I have come to understand after many years of sitting with people who feel confused, exhausted, or pushed into turns in life they never asked for. It is this: no one truly lacks light. They only forget how to recognize it. What makes people suffer is not weakness. It is that they were taught to look at the shadows of others before looking at the light within themselves. From childhood, we were brought into the world through seemingly harmless instructions. Be good, so you will be praised. Try hard, so you will not be criticized. Stay quiet, so adults will be pleased. Follow the crowd, so you will not stand out. Each of these messages, repeated over the years, forms a dangerous habit. The habit of trusting the outer voice more than the voice deep within the soul. And when that habit takes root for too long, we begin to mistake it for our nature. We forget that we once knew the inner voice so well: gentle, clear, patient, undemanding, simply inviting. One of the biggest reasons people lose their sense of inner light is the dependence on external judgment. We become used to measuring our worth through the eyes of others. A compliment lifts us up, a criticism pulls us down. And then we believe that our value rises and falls according to someone else. That is the moment the light begins to be hidden. Not extinguished, only hidden because we turn away from it to gaze into distorted mirrors outside ourselves. Have you ever felt that way? As if you must please everyone just to feel some peace, yet the more you try, the heavier you become. The more you attempt to meet every expectation, the farther you drift from yourself. I believe you have felt this because most of humanity has. And the most striking thing is that we endure it until it becomes familiar, until we assume that this is the only way to survive. But here is a truth. The soul does not understand the concept of permission. It does not need anyone to grant it the right to shine. It does not need approval to be at peace. It does not wait for anyone to validate its existence. All of these belong to the world of fear, not to the true pattern of who you are. Another reason we lose the sense of our own light is that society teaches us to measure worth through comparison. From a young age, we hear phrases like, "Look at what this person can do. Look at how far others have gone." At first, we feel only a little pressure. But slowly the question, "Who am I?" is replaced with, "Am I as good as they are?" And when comparison becomes the measure of life, we lose the quietness we need to turn inward. Your inner pattern never uses comparison as a guide. It never tells you to be better than someone else. It tells you to return to yourself, because your light does not share its identity with anyone. No one can live your life. No one can carry the weight of your soul. No one can hold or replace the light that was written into you from the beginning. Yet the deepest loss of self for many people does not come from comparison. It comes from the silent wounds they carry that no one else sees. Some grew up in noise so overwhelming that there was no space to hear themselves. Some lived in families filled with chaos, and the inner light had to hide to keep them safe. Some walked through heartbreak so severe they came to believe they were born to lack, to fear, to worry. But the truth never changes. The wounds are clouds. You are the sky. I have met people who feel not enough in every decision. They tell me they fear being wrong, fear being judged, fear being rejected. And I tell them that these fears are not identity. They are dust covering the original light. That light has never been damaged. It has only been covered by beliefs repeated too many times. And then they ask me how they can feel that light again. I tell them that it does not return through force or strength. It returns through gently removing what does not belong to you. When you choose to pause and look inward, you see something important. The light does not require you to be perfect. It only asks you to be honest. Honesty opens the path to healing. Pretending to be strong pulls you farther from your center. The Christ pattern within you, or whatever name you choose for that sacred essence, never asks you to deserve it. It only asks you to notice it is there. It does not need worship. It needs trust. And when you begin to trust the truth within yourself more than the echoes around you, the light returns. Not by miracle, but by truth. You have not lost your light. You have only lost the belief that it is still there. And belief can be called back the moment you are willing. If you have ever stood in front of a mirror in a dim room, you would see your reflection blur. Not because you have changed shape, but because the light shining on the mirror is not bright enough. Life works the same way. Many people believe they are living in a world of uncertainty and chaos, yet they do not realize that what they see outside is only a reflection of the quiet conversations happening inside them every day. The law of reflection moves as gently as breath. No one commands it, yet it always operates. It does not punish. It does not take sides. It simply returns the image you hold in your mind again and again. I once met a man named Michael, a gentle man who felt as if life was constantly working against him. He said he always met difficult people. Every task was blocked, every opportunity slipped through his fingers. He spoke with a sadness so deep It seemed the universe had singled him out. But as we talked longer, I realized that what was opposing him was not the world, but the old and quiet beliefs he had never examined. He believed he was not capable. He believed failure followed him. He believed others would never stand with him. And when you carry such an image everywhere you go, the world does only one thing. It reflects it back so you can see your own belief more clearly. The law of reflection is not a mystical claim. It is a human experience repeated through generations. When you see life with wary eyes, you will notice things that make you cautious. When you hold memories of hurt, you begin to fear that everyone will hurt you again. When you believe you must work twice as hard as others to be accepted, life will present circumstances that force you to keep proving yourself. The outer world has no shape of its own. It forms itself around the pattern of your inner perception. Some people ask me, what about the injustice, the heartbreak, the wounds we never asked for? I always answer as gently as I can. Not everything you experience comes from your intention. But the way you understand yourself after those experiences shapes the rest of your life. The law of reflection does not begin with blame. It begins with ownership. It does not say you created the pain. It says you have the power to choose what defines you after the pain. When a person loses faith in themselves, the world shrinks. Not because the world is small, but because they see only the part of the world that matches their doubt. When a person begins to believe in their worth, they do not step into paradise, but they begin to notice doors they had never seen before. Every opportunity in life appears according to the brightness of your inner perception. Have you noticed this? When you are tense, even small things irritate you. When you are at peace, even big things do not shake you easily. This shows that circumstances are not the root. Your inner state shapes your experience of those circumstances. Healing does not begin in the world outside. It begins the moment you dare to look inward and say that what you believed about life has been reflected back to you for years, and now you want to see differently. Remember this: the world is only a mirror. The mirror does not choose your shape. It only reflects. If you want the mirror to change, you do not need to break it. You only need to change how you stand before it. When the inner image shifts, the reflection follows. No change outside can last if the inside has not been adjusted. Here is a truth everyone on the path of awakening must learn. You cannot control the world, but you can shape the way you perceive the world. And then the world will adapt to that perception. This is not positive illusion. This is the operating law of the human mind. Think about it. When you enter a conversation with a defensive mindset, even harmless words feel like an attack. But when you enter with peace, the same words do not disturb you. This shows that the truth is not in the words you hear. It is in the state of your mind when you hear them. In the same way, if you carry the image of someone who is always lacking, always behind, always unworthy, life will bring situations that reinforce this image so you can see what you have been believing. But when you begin to trust the wholeness you were born with, you do not have to force life to change. It changes because you have changed. So what is the most important thing? It is realizing that the world does not go ahead of you. It follows you. It does not teach you your value. It only confirms what you have silently accepted about yourself. And when you change that acceptance, everything shifts. The law of reflection is a gentle reminder that you have more power than you think. Not the power to control circumstances, but the power to choose perception. And perception will choose the circumstances that align with it. If you want to see a more spacious life, you do not need to push the world open. You only need to open within. When the inside brightens even a little, the outside brightens with it. Across many decades of observing human life, I have noticed something strange yet consistently true. Most of the suffering we go through does not come from circumstances. It comes from forgetting. Not forgetting knowledge or skills, but forgetting essence. Human beings do not need to learn countless new things. What they truly need is to remember what was written into their soul long before they could name their sorrow or their joy. I often say that healing does not come from tense effort, but from returning. You do not heal by trying to become someone better. You heal when you reconnect with the part that was good from the beginning. And this does not happen in noise. It happens in stillness, because stillness is the natural environment of the soul. It is in this stillness that you begin to hear something clearly. You have never been separated from your source. You simply turned your face in another direction. People believe they are lacking because they measure themselves by the standards of the world. But when you begin to remember, layers in your mind start to fall away one by one. Those layers are not you. They are fears repeated too many times, judgments planted into you, disappointments accumulated through the years. All of these can dissolve when touched by one truth. The sacred essence within you has never been harmed by anything you have lived through. I have met people who have tasted loss, misunderstanding, betrayal, rejection, and they tell me they have lost a part of themselves. But each time I listen, I see clearly that the part they think is gone is only waiting to be recognized again. Like a seed resting quietly in the soil, waiting for spring to wake it, your sacred essence has never disappeared. It only needs you to return and say, I remember. One of the most important laws in spiritual life is the law of recognition. Whatever you accept as true within yourself, whether strength or weakness, peace or chaos, begins to shape your life. But most people hand their recognition to fear. They agree with the voice that makes them smaller. They believe conclusions made by an exhausted version of themselves. They look at themselves through their experiences instead of looking at themselves through their original light. I want you to understand this. You do not need to fight to become strong. You need to realize the strength that is already there. You do not need to search for guidance outside. You need to remember the gentle voice within you, the voice that always points toward peace. And when you remember, change begins. Not through drama, not through miracle, but through order, through the rearranging of the inner layers of your mind into the sequence of truth. Notice this. There are mornings when you wake up feeling clearer even though nothing has changed. It is not because life shifted. It is because in one small moment you stood closer to the truth within you. You touched the part of yourself that circumstances cannot dim. This is the effect of remembering. It does not come from the outside. It comes from the agreement of your heart with what has always been true. When you begin to remember, you no longer ask, what must I do to deserve peace? You ask, what part of me has forgotten that peace is my home? This shift in questioning is what creates healing. Healing does not change your essence. Healing removes what made you believe your essence was small. And when essence is seen, the world reflects that change. Not because life treats you better, but because you no longer treat yourself as someone lacking. You see yourself through light, and that light becomes the standard for every choice, every thought, every interaction you walk through. Let me share something else with you. In every journey of returning, there will be moments when you feel paused, slowed, or even moving backward. But do not worry. This is not failure. It is inner rearrangement. Like a lake disturbed by the wind, the water is still water. It only needs time to become clear again. So do you. Your essence does not change just because you temporarily feel unsteady. Allow yourself to have days like that, because it is in being honest with those tired days that you truly step into healing. And in this returning, never forget. Whenever you remember again, the force of the universe leans toward you. Not to favor you, but to match you. Truth always aligns with hearts that are opening. Now I want to invite you to do something small, yet powerful. Leave a comment with the words "I am ready to change" or simply the number 1, so I know you are still walking with yourself on this journey. This is not a promise to me. It is your own affirmation. I am remembering. There is a truth many people have never heard in a gentle way. Jesus did not come to give you a distant God to worship. He came to give you a pattern to remember yourself. When I look at his teachings, I do not see someone trying to create distance between himself and the rest of the world. I see someone walking softly on dusty roads with a heart completely clear, as if he were saying that what I can do, you can also do when you remember your source. For generations, people have looked at his life as an exception. But if you listen more deeply, you will see that the greatest message was never about exception. The greatest message was unity. Unity between you and the source, between you and truth, between you and the sacred essence you have carried since the beginning. When he said, "I and the Father are one," many saw it as a statement of privilege. But to me, it feels like a mirror. A sentence not meant to make you bow, but to help you stand tall. Not to make you feel small, but to show you that the separation you feel is only an illusion. He did not say it to place himself above. He said it to show you the true height of your own essence. I have met people who admire Jesus so much that they believe they will never be good enough to touch the peace he lived with. Every time I want to place their hand over their own heart and say that you do not need to become like him to deserve peace. You only need to return to the part of you that he reflects. Because Christ is not a person. Christ is a state of awareness. It is the level of consciousness you enter when you stop believing you are all the things that once hurt you. Do you see the difference? One is worship. The other is awakening. And awakening has always belonged to you. If you look closely at the life of Jesus, you will notice something. He did not live from fear. He did not react to the storms around him. He did not let the noise of the crowd drown out the voice within. He lived from unity, the perfect harmony between personal awareness and divine awareness. And his heart was bright, not because he was an exception, but because he never forgot who he was. That same remembrance is waiting for you. Many people think Christ consciousness is something mysterious and distant, reserved only for monks or souls, pure enough to reach it. But think about it. Why would a truth need to be far away? Christ consciousness is not a reward for the perfect. It is a birthright for anyone willing to let go of the roles the world placed on them. You do not need to climb a mountain to find Christ. You only need to step out of the beliefs that make you small. And you will discover that Christ is not above you. Christ is in the depth within you. Some ask me what they must do to live closer to Christ. I answer that they must set down what is not theirs. Because Christ does not come when you try to become holy. Christ comes when you become honest. What truly blocks people is not weakness. It is the voice of fear, the voice that whispers that you are not enough, that you are too late, too broken, too flawed to step into the light. And what I want to say to you gently is that this is not the voice of truth. The voice of truth never makes you smaller. The voice of truth never names you after your wounds. The voice of truth only reminds you of the light you forgot, not the darkness you fear. And when you look at Jesus as a mirror instead of a mountain to admire from a distance, you will understand that unity is the most natural thing in you, not something you must fight to reach. He was not saying, "Look at me because I am different." He was saying, "Look at me so you can remember what already belongs to you." Christ consciousness is the full trust that you are not separated from the source, not separated from truth, not measured by your past mistakes. It is the awareness that love and meaning do not come from what you do, but from what you are. And what you are has never changed. If you have lived believing you must do something extraordinary to be loved, to be accepted, to be worthy, let this part reach you. Jesus did not come so you would worship him correctly. He came so you would remember how to live in alignment with your own soul. No bowing, no fear, no shrinking, only living with the unity you already carry. When you begin to live with that awareness, you do not become a different version of yourself. You become the true one. When you begin to see Jesus as a mirror reflecting your own sacred nature, a quiet shift begins to take place in your life. Not a loud or sudden change, but a movement in your inner foundation. One day you notice that the things which once made you shrink, the things that told you to stay on the sidelines, no longer have the same power over you. Because when truth is recognized, illusion must leave. But to step into that freedom, a person often has to face something that seems small but is actually enormous. The roles they have worn for years without noticing. There is the role of the one who asks for permission to exist, the one who apologizes simply for being present, the one who gives up space even when they are empty inside, the one who makes themselves small so no one feels discomfort, the one who pretends to be fine to avoid bothering anyone. Those roles are not your essence. They are survival patterns you learned when you were too tender to understand that you never needed to shrink to be loved. I once met a woman named Claire. Her whole life she lived with the fear of disappointing someone. Every time she faced a decision, big or small, she asked, "What will people think?" She believed her safety depended on pleasing others, and so for many years she lived like a shadow in her own life. When she told me her story, I said to her what I now want to say to you. You are not created to dim yourself. The Christ pattern within you, the sacred design you were given from the start, does not know how to shrink. It is not encoded with fear of bothering anyone. It does not operate through permission. Christ consciousness never teaches that smallness is humility. It teaches that truth never needs to whisper. Yet the first step back to inner authority is not becoming stronger. It is seeing clearly what makes you shrink. Because you cannot step out of a role you do not realize you are playing. Ask yourself gently, what makes me believe I am not allowed to take up space? What makes me apologize for my existence? What makes me believe that my desires are an inconvenience? These questions are not meant to dig up pain. They are meant to shine light into the corners to help you see that these beliefs never belong to you. They were formed in moments when you were too young to tell truth from inherited fear. Inner authority is not about force or control. It is a quiet knowing that you do not need to lower yourself to make others comfortable. You do not need to dim your light so no one has to squint. And you do not need permission to live in alignment with the pattern placed within you from the beginning. When you stand in that authority, you begin making decisions from truth rather than fear. You walk forward not to prove your worth, but because you know you already have it. You do not wait for someone to give you a green light to be honest with who you are. And the miracle is this. When you become clear, everything around you begins to adjust. The right people come closer. The wrong ones quietly drift away. Pressure softens. Your inner voice grows stronger. Peace moves into the smallest actions of your day. You begin to see that you were never weak. You were simply covered by old roles that hid your strength for too long. Inner authority has another important power. It changes the way you face fear. Fear is strong only when you believe it has authority. But when you realize that you choose the direction, fear becomes nothing more than a breeze touching the water, never deep enough to change your course. You do not need to destroy fear. You only need to stand in your true place, and fear loses its power. Claire, the woman I mentioned earlier, finally understood this. She did not become loud or forceful. She became clear. And when she became clear, her world became clear. Those who once took advantage of her softness stopped appearing. The opportunities that had avoided her began to find her. Not because she changed the world, but because she changed the way she stepped into it. And this is what I want to give you. When you stand in your true place, not higher and not lower, the world reflects that version of you. You do not need to become great. You only need to stop shrinking, and the light will take care of the rest. There is a truth many people do not know, but do not trust enough to live by. The mind is not you. The mind is only a tool, and you are the one holding that tool. Most fear, confusion, doubt, and exhaustion in human life does not come from circumstances. It comes from believing that every thought appearing in the mind must be obeyed. But a thought is not a command. A thought is an invitation, and you are the one who decides which invitation is allowed to enter. I often tell my students that a thought has power only when you agree with it. Without your agreement, it is nothing more than a cloud passing across the sky of your mind. But most people do not know what they are agreeing with. They believe that because a thought appears, it must be true, it must be important, it must be analyzed until they are exhausted. And then they are carried away by the mind like a boat with no one at the helm. You must remember this. You are not the boat. You are the one steering it. Observe your day. Maybe you wake up with a tired thought. Today will be difficult. If you agree with it, your emotions sink, your energy lowers, your body tightens, and you walk through the day expecting something negative to happen. But if you see the thought without agreeing, it drifts away like a breeze through an open window, leaving no trace. This is not denial of reality. This is ownership. Reality is shaped by what you repeat in the mind, not by what passes through it for a moment. The mind, when not guided, will follow old habits, habits formed by fear, by environment, by memories, and by voices that were never yours. There are voices you heard as a child. Be careful, you often make mistakes. You are not as good as others. You must try hard or you will not be accepted. And you believed these were your true voice. They were not. They were shadows of memory replayed by the mind as routine. The law of the mind says this: whatever thought you hold with emotion becomes the experience you step into. Not because someone rewards or punishes you, but because the mind is a field that multiplies whatever is planted. It does not distinguish between good or bad seeds. It only grows what is repeated. If you plant the thought, "I am always lacking," the mind will look for evidence of it. If you plant the thought, "I am not enough," the mind will highlight every failure. If you plant the thought, "I must please others to have peace," the mind will make you afraid of losing people whenever you speak your truth. But if you plant thoughts like, "I can choose my response," "I am not defined by my past," "I am guided from within and not by outer noise," then the mind will build a new foundation for you to stand on. The miracle is that the mind is very loyal. It is loyal to whatever you repeat most. The real question is this: what you repeat, does it come from the person you want to become, or from the fear you learned to carry? Many believe they must change their circumstances to change their life. But the truth is much simpler. If you want to change your circumstances, change the way you think about yourself. No circumstance is stronger than the belief you feed daily. The mind is a garden. If you do not choose the seeds, weeds will choose for you. If you do not tend the soil, old roots will return without asking. But when you plant intentionally, water consistently, and remove what no longer belongs, the garden reflects your work with perfect accuracy. Understand this gently. You cannot stop the mind from thinking, but you can choose which direction your thinking goes. A negative thought cannot harm you. Believing it is truth can. This is why the Christ pattern within you cannot fully operate when the mind is filled with self-condemnation. Not because you lack faith, but because your mind is following signals that no longer match the essence awakening inside you. And then when you begin to see the mind as a tool rather than a master, something soft happens. You stop reacting so quickly. You stop letting thoughts drag you into spirals of worry. You stop calling the waves in your mind by your own name. You begin to say, I am having a worried thought, but I am not the worry. I am having a fearful thought, but I do not belong to fear. I am having an old thought, but I have the right to choose a new one. And that moment, the moment you stand up and reclaim the right to choose your thoughts, is the moment inner authority returns to you. No one can choose your thoughts for you. No one can tend the garden of your mind except you. No one can dim your light unless you agree with the whisper of the dark. You are not the stream of thoughts. You are the one observing the stream. And the observer is always stronger than what is observed. When you live from that place, your life begins to change direction. Not through force, but through awareness. Not through pressure, but through choice. Because the mind, when guided well, becomes your most faithful companion on the path of awakening. If you observe carefully, you will see that your life is not shaped by big events, but by the small conversations happening quietly inside your mind. These are the sentences no one hears yet. They have the power to strengthen you or make you shrink. And the remarkable thing is this. People often believe they are shaped by circumstances, but in truth they are shaped by the dialogues no one sees. Pause for a moment and look within. How many times a day do you hear thoughts like these? I am not sure I can do it. I fail easily. I must be careful not to disappoint anyone. I am not as important as others. These words are never spoken aloud yet. They operate quietly like underground tunnels. They direct your thinking, restrict your choices, blur your vision, and make you feel as if you are always one step behind in your own life. These are your inner agreements, the silent contracts you signed with yourself without realizing. They do not come from truth. They come from fear, from memory, from wounds you have not yet set down, from words you heard when you were too small to question them. And over time, these agreements become the ground on which all your decisions fall. A person may think they are choosing with logic, but in reality they are choosing from agreements repeated many times. An agreement that says, I am not enough. An agreement that says, I must endure. An agreement that says, I must not let anyone down. An agreement that says, I was born to stay behind. Those agreements are not you. They are echoes from a time when you did not know you had the right to choose. I once spoke with a man named Daniel. He was talented, gentle, genuinely kind. But he carried one silent agreement that kept him small, the belief that if he expressed his true desires, he would be rejected. He did not remember where he learned it, only that whenever opportunity came near, the thought pulled him back. It was only when he looked directly at that agreement and said, this is no longer true for me, that his life finally began to open. And that is what I want you to understand. It is not fear that shapes your destiny. It is how many times you agree with the fear. Your inner dialogue is the place where your entire life can change, not through force, but through awareness. By learning to hear which voice is truth and which voice is only the echo of an old, tired version of you. There are 3 kinds of inner dialogue you must listen to. The dialogue when you are quiet, the dialogue when you are hurting, the dialogue when you face an important choice. These 3 moments reveal the agreements you have been living by. When you are quiet, the truest whispers emerge. When you are hurting, old beliefs rise to protect you. When you are choosing the silent agreements, decide whether you move forward or step back. And the beautiful thing is this: any agreement can be rewritten. You do not need to destroy your old self. You only need to stop agreeing with the sentences that keep you small. Sentences like, I must endure just a little more. I do not want to bother anyone. My dreams are not as important as others. If I succeed, people will leave me. None of these contain the breath of truth. They do not come from your soul. They come from wounds. And when you begin to tell yourself simple things like, I am allowed to step out, I am allowed to change my story, I do not need to repeat the old. I have the right to choose a new agreement. The inner ground begins to shift. This is not magic. This is the natural law of the mind. What you think repeatedly you become, and what you become your life reflects. When you change the quiet conversation, you rewrite the script of your destiny. But there is something important. Do not fight the old dialogues. Do not battle them. Do not blame yourself for carrying them so long. You only need to say, I understand why you are here, but I do not need you anymore. When you say this gently, the old begins to slide off like a shirt that no longer fits. And then the new has space to enter. I want you to pause for a moment and answer this, not for me, but for yourself. In these recent days, what sentence have you repeated the most in your mind? Does it make you grow or make you shrink? Thank you for daring to look at that. Because every time you look directly at your inner dialogue, you take back one more piece of your life. I have spent many years observing how human beings create their reality, and the more I observe, the more I am convinced of something you may have heard somewhere, but never fully understood the power of. A human life is built from the inside out. There is no event in the physical world that does not first exist as an image, an idea, a spiritual pattern in the mind. It is not what you hope for that shapes your life. It is what you continually hold within. Many people think their destiny changes when they take a big action. But in truth, destiny changes when the inner image changes. The image is the mold and circumstances are the clay. The clay cannot resist the mold. It must become whatever the mold directs it to be. I have met people who lived their whole lives in fear without knowing that they were constantly imagining the worst. A mother afraid for her child far from home. A worker afraid of losing his job. A man afraid of being abandoned. They do not know that each time they build the worst scenario in their mind, they are giving it form so it can look for a way to appear. This is not superstition. This is spiritual mechanics, something understood centuries ago, but forgotten by modern minds. Inner images are not simply imagination. They are instructions for creation. You may speak thousands of positive words. You may write beautiful dreams in your journal. You may tell your friends what you hope will come. But if you still hold inside an image of a small, limited, frightened life, the law of the mind, loyal as it is, can only do one thing: reflect that image. I want you to remember the moments when you felt lighter, younger, as if something inside you was opening. In those moments, your inner image brightened. That is why even one fresh and truthful thought can change the way you breathe, the way you speak, the way you see the world. The mind does not distinguish between an image that is real and an image you feed with emotion. It only repeats what you return to most often. If you consistently imagine difficulty, the mind arranges life around that direction. If you consistently imagine a strong, clear, peaceful version of yourself, the mind immediately reorganizes your inner structure to harmonize with that image. I have seen many lives transformed not because someone gained more money or more opportunities or luck. They changed because they stopped imagining themselves as victims. They began holding the image of someone peaceful, someone guided, someone who does not need external approval to believe in their worth. And when the inner image changes, they do not need to push life into place. Life begins to move on its own. Let me make this clear. You cannot rise above the image you hold of yourself. If you see yourself as small, big opportunities will make you step back. If you see yourself as unlovable, every expression of affection will feel suspicious. If you see yourself as powerless, every new situation will make you wait for rescue. But if you see yourself as someone guided, someone connected, someone capable, every closed door becomes clear even before it opens. Because the inner image does not only change emotion, it changes the field of perception, and perception changes every experience. I remember once, a man came to me saying he wanted to change his life, but felt everything was against him. I asked him what image he saw of his life, when no one was looking. He was quiet. Then he said, "I usually see myself failing before I even begin." I told him that this was the true creator of his life, not his goals, not his prayers, but that image. Many think they must believe harder, but belief does not change unless the image changes. The image is the language of the subconscious, and the subconscious is where the power of creation operates. You can hide from others, but you cannot hide the image you repeat when no one is watching. So what must you do? Not invent fantasies, not build unrealistic dreams. You only need to do one simple but powerful thing. Imagine yourself from truth, not from fear. The truth is that you lack nothing to begin. The truth is that you are not separated from the source. The truth is that you are not as small as the memories that once convinced you. The truth is that you can choose a new image of yourself today. And when you do this consistently and gently, the new image becomes the mold into which your life is poured. Because the law of the mind has no choice but to follow the strongest inner pattern you hold. I want you to hear this slowly. The image you nurture today will become the life you step into tomorrow. Do not see this as a beautiful idea. See it as a structural truth. And this truth is always on your side. There is something you need to know about yourself, something most people fear or misunderstand. Desire is not a sign of selfishness. Desire is a sign of life. If you can still feel a quiet longing calling you from within, it means your soul is still beating, still moving, still open to entering deeper growth. I have met people who said they no longer dare to dream, no longer dare to want anything. They fear that desire will lead to disappointment. They fear that dreaming will invite judgment. They fear that wanting more will make others leave them. And so they suffocate the very things that could lead them to peace and meaning. I want you to hear this gently. Desire does not make you weak. Desire makes you true. You were not born to live as a silent, shrunken version of yourself fading out to please the world. You were born carrying a calling, and that calling often appears in the form of desire. Desire is not, "I want something outside." Desire is a part of me wants to step into the light. Desire is a spiritual signal. When you want to love more deeply, it is your soul showing you that you were born for connection. When you want to contribute something meaningful, it is your soul telling you that you have more within than you realize. When you want a wider life, it is your soul telling you that you are ready to leave old limits behind. When you want peace, it is your soul reminding you that peace has always been your home. The strange thing is, the world teaches you that desire is dangerous. But the truth is the opposite. The silence of desire is what is dangerous. A soul that no longer wants anything is a soul that has forgotten it was designed to grow. But understand this. Not every desire comes from your spiritual center. Some desires come from wounds, from the need to prove, to fill emptiness, to escape fear. True desire is different. It does not shout. It does not demand. It does not tighten you. It taps gently, steadily, patiently, like a door within you waiting to open. You can feel the difference. The desire of the ego makes you run. The desire of the soul makes you open. And every true desire carries a message. This part of you is ready to live. I often say that desire is the whisper of the divine within you, not a voice from the sky, but from the center where you and the source meet. This is why true desire is never wrong. The only mistake is when you silence it. Many people believe desire matters only when it is big or extraordinary. But sometimes a simple desire, "I want to feel lighter, I want to be kind to myself, I want to rest," is also the call of awakening. Your soul does not measure big or small. It only knows true or not true. When you listen to true desire, you step into gentle courage. The courage to be honest with yourself. the courage not to follow the expectations of others, the courage to leave a path that no longer fits, the courage to choose what aligns with your soul. You do not need to take a big leap. The soul never demands a jump. It asks for a lean, a small shift, honest and real. And those small shifts open great doors. I have seen many people change just from admitting their true desire, even before knowing what to do with it. Their eyes brighten, their voice softens, their posture rises. Something inside them loosens simply because they stop denying. Denying desire is denying life. Admitting desire is giving the soul permission to breathe again. So what holds people back the most when facing true desire? Only one thing. They think they are not worthy. But worthiness is not something you prove. Worthiness is something you recognize. Like the Christ pattern, it does not come after you become good enough. It has been there since the beginning. You only need to see it. Desire is the same. It is the reminder that there is more within you than what you have allowed yourself to live. And if you are reading these words, I want to invite you to do something gentle but powerful. Comment, "I am ready to change," or simply the number 1 if you feel there is a desire inside you wanting to breathe. Not for me to know, but for you to know that you have acknowledged the signal. Desire is the beginning of movement, and movement is the language of life. When people speak of faith, they often imagine it as a strong emotion, a spiritual excitement, or a kind of special courage that only a few possess. But in my experience, faith is not an emotion. Faith is the quiet agreement within you, the agreement that what is true is already in motion, even when you cannot yet see it. Faith is not loud, not forceful, not something that needs to be displayed. Faith is an inner stillness, like a lake without wind, where the image of the sky appears without distortion. When your inner world reaches that state, you no longer need to try to believe. You simply know you are aligned with a greater order, one that never rushes, never missteps, and never forgets you. Many people come to me saying they want stronger faith. But what they truly want is not faith. What they want is assurance before they begin. They want evidence before they step. They want results before they change their perception. And so they wait. They wait for something that must begin inside to appear outside. But faith works the other way. Faith says, "I agree first," and the world will reflect that agreement. Remember this: faith does not make something happen. Faith makes you become the person to whom that thing can happen. Faith is not the key that opens the door. Faith is the awareness that the door was never locked. One of the great paradoxes of spiritual life is this: when you are trying to believe, you are not truly believing. True faith does not strain. It does not need constant affirmation. It does not battle doubt. It does not shout to silence fear. True faith is like breathing, gentle, steady, natural. You do not try to breathe. You simply breathe. True faith is the same. You do not try to believe. You simply agree with the truth already within you. What strengthens faith is not effort, but clarity of identity. When you forget who you are, when you think you are small, abandoned, disconnected from the source, you cannot believe. But when you remember that you belong to the light, faith does not need to be summoned. It rises on its own, like a seed meeting sunlight. I once knew a man named Joseph. He often said he wanted to trust his journey, but when faced with important decisions, he stepped back out of fear of being wrong. When I asked him what made him doubt, he said, "I am not sure I deserve good things." And I told him what you also need to hear. Faith grows not from looking at the outcome. Faith grows from looking at your own worth. You cannot believe in an open future if you do not believe you deserve to be in that future. Faith does not require you to have all the answers. It only requires you to choose the voice of truth over the voice of fear. And when you choose that even a little, your entire inner system begins to turn. Some think faith must be like fire. But faith is more like water. It is gentle but enduring. It is quiet but deep, and it can soften anything inside you that has become rigid. Faith does not rise from the mind. Faith rises from alignment with your essence. There will be days when you feel unsteady, but faith does not demand that you stand tall all the time. Faith only asks that you return to the inner truth whenever fear pulls you away. Even one small return each day is enough to change a lifetime. Many ask me how they can know if they are living in true faith and not imagination. I answer this. You are living in true faith when your inner being no longer resists the good that wants to come to you. It is a softening, not a striving. A release, not a giving up. An opening, not a reckless leap. You begin to see that goodness is not something you must fight for. Goodness is something that finds its way to you when you align with its frequency. Faith is unity between you and truth, not the truth outside the truth inside. And that truth is simple. You are not abandoned. You are not separated from the source. You are not loved less because you once feared. Faith does not ask you to prove your strength. Faith only asks you to realize you were never alone. In that moment, your inner world softens. And when the inner world softens, life opens. I want you to remember this as a principle that never fails. Wherever you agree with truth, truth begins to move. You do not need to push or force or struggle. You only need to agree. Because agreement is the voice of the soul, and faith is the soul breathing. Among all the capacities human beings possess, imagination is one of the most powerful, yet also one of the most misunderstood. People think imagination is about creating unrealistic pictures, fantasies with no grounding. But in truth, imagination is the organ that shapes reality. It is not an escape from life. It is preparation for life. Everything you see in the physical world once existed first in the mind of someone. A bridge, a house, a piece of music, a transformation in a human life. Nothing reaches its final form without first having a seed form within. Your life follows the same law. You do not step into anything you have never imagined yourself stepping into. Not because you lack opportunity, but because the mind cannot receive what it has no inner mold to hold. The law of imagination speaks softly but very clearly. You do not receive what you want. You receive what you are used to seeing within yourself. I once met a young man named Matthew. He told me he wanted success, wanted confidence, wanted peace. But every time he closed his eyes, he saw himself failing, stuck repeating old patterns. He did not know that this inner rehearsal was shaping the experiences he kept encountering. Not because he was unworthy, but because he was training his mind to expect what he did not want. There is nothing mystical about this. It is how the subconscious works. It does not distinguish good from bad. It only uses the image repeated most often as its instruction. What you imagine, you live with. Imagination is a tool you use every day, whether you are aware of it or not. When you worry, you are imagining. When you fear something that has not happened, you are imagining. When you picture the worst possible outcome, you are using your imagination in a negative direction. But the moment you redirect it, that same power becomes a source of healing. Because imagination is never neutral. It creates the field of energy you wake up inside each morning. Think of the last time you imagined something that made you feel lighter. A moment when you pictured yourself standing in peace or moving beyond something that once scared you. Even the simple act of imagining changed you. Your heartbeat shifted. Your breath deepened. Your shoulders softened. You felt a new future beginning to grow within you. That is not illusion. That is your inner world adjusting to a new image. And when the inner world changes, circumstances change. Many people think they must feel confident first, and then imagine something good. But the truth is the opposite. You must imagine something good first, and confidence grows from that. No one waits for the water to warm before lighting the fire. You light the fire and the water warms. Positive imagination is not drawing a dream too far from reach. It is agreeing ahead of time with a better version of yourself. And when you agree, the mind makes space for it, as if a room were being cleared for a new guest. Imagination is the act of inviting the future into the present. You do not need to imagine every detail. What matters most is the feeling your imagination brings. Because feeling is the language of the subconscious. If you imagine a peaceful life and your feeling is light, deep, open, that feeling becomes the signal. If you imagine yourself strong and your feeling is steady and trusting, that steadiness opens the way. If you imagine yourself healed and your heart softens, that softness is the beginning of healing. Imagination is not running away from reality. It is establishing a new reality. You do not need to believe completely right away. You only need to allow the new image to appear, because allowance is the first step of all transformation. Understand this in a very practical way. Any image you return to often becomes a perception habit. Your perception habit becomes your reaction habit. Your reaction habit becomes your life. Nothing mystical, only the structure of the mind. But here is something essential. Imagination does not work when you rush. It works when you become present. You do not imagine to escape life. You imagine to meet your true nature in a clearer form. When you bring full presence into the new image, you tell your inner world, I allow this to become part of me. And life always answers. If you allow, I arrange. I want you to take a moment each day, just a few minutes, to imagine one thing. Imagine yourself in the most peaceful version of who you are. It does not matter where you are in life right now. That one image creates a field that pulls your future into alignment with the pattern your soul wants. Imagination is the pen. Your inner world is the page. Your life is the printed copy. You write first. Reality follows. There is something many people forget. Thoughts are seeds. Emotion is the soil in which those seeds take root. A thought that does not reach the emotional layer passes through you like a cloud without rain. It has no weight, no momentum, no power to shift anything in your life. But a thought soaked into emotion is different. It has weight. It has frequency. It has pull. It becomes a command your inner world begins to carry out. I once heard someone say they had tried to think positively for many years, but their life still did not change. When I asked them what they actually felt in their body when they thought positively, they were silent. Because they had never paid attention to the feeling. They only changed the words in their mind, but not the inner state that needed to accompany those words. The law of emotion is gentle but profound. You do not attract what you say you want. You attract what you feel you are inside. This is not philosophy. This is the mechanism of the human energy field. If you think of peace, but your body tightens, your heartbeat quickens, your mind runs toward the worst case, then peace has no doorway into your life. Not because you are unworthy, but because the door is closed. Emotion is the door. Many people live their entire lives in a low emotional field without knowing they can choose a different inner frequency the way someone chooses a radio channel. But changing frequency is not about forcing yourself to be cheerful or ignoring sadness. Changing frequency is the ability to see your emotion and not be carried away by it. Emotion is not the enemy. Emotion is a signal. When you feel fear, it signals that you are near an old belief that has not been healed. When you feel sadness, it signals that a part of you has been forgotten. When you feel anger, it signals that you are crossing your own limit. When you feel peace, It signals that you are standing in the right place of your soul. Emotion is never wrong. It only needs to be heard. And once it is heard with clarity, it transforms. The only thing that keeps emotion stuck is resistance. Some believe they must eliminate negative emotion to become a better version of themselves. But the truth is, nothing is negative when held in light. It is the light that transforms it, not avoidance. When you allow yourself to acknowledge emotion without condemning yourself, you create an opening. And that opening is what allows the Christ pattern, the sacred pattern within you, to go deeper. Truth cannot enter a place locked by shame or self-judgment. I want you to understand this. Emotion is the bridge between thought and reality. If you change your thought but not your emotion, the bridge cannot be built. If you hold a new emotion but your thoughts still repeat old stories, the bridge is incomplete. What you need is coherence. Right thought plus right emotion equals right direction. Emotion is the place where you receive what you have been thinking. Emotion is where ideas become substance. Emotion is where the words in your mind turn into the language of the soul. Think back to a moment when you truly believed something not in your mind but in your whole body. In that moment, your energy changed instantly. Your spine rose. Your breath deepened. Your steps became steady. You felt weight. That is the agreement between emotion and awareness. And that agreement creates attraction. But how can emotion change when life outside still gives you reasons to worry? The answer is not change your life first and then feel something new. The answer is feel something new first and life will follow. Not instantly, not hurriedly, but precisely. Imagine someone who always worries. If they wait for everything to be perfect before they feel safe, they will wait a lifetime. But if they choose to feel a little safety in an imperfect moment, just a little, they open a crack of light. And that crack becomes the first doorway for a new reality to enter. Emotion does not require a leap. Emotion needs only a small shift. From fear to slightly calmer. From tension to slightly softer. From doubt to a little trust. That little shift is enough to change the flow. The Christ pattern never moves through pressure. It moves through softness. Softness is how the soul says, I am ready. And when you are ready, new emotion becomes the magnet that guides the way. Here is what I want you to carry from this. Emotion is the space where you become the truth you are learning. Not through knowledge, not through logic, but through vibration. If your emotion changes, your life will change with it. It cannot be otherwise. There is something most people do not realize. You are always sending out a signal, even when you are silent. You do not need to impress anyone. You do not need to appear strong or calm. You do not need to speak beautifully. Your inner field of energy, or you may call it your presence, your atmosphere, your soul frequency, always goes ahead of you and reaches others before any word you say. This is not mystical. It is very real. You have walked into a room and felt heaviness at once. No one said anything yet. You sensed something was off. You have also stepped into a space that felt warm even without loud laughter or bright smiles. That warmth did not come from the wall color or the lighting. It came from the energy field of the people in the room. And the same is true for you. You are a moving field of energy. You do not communicate only through words. You communicate through the truth you are living. I once met a man who looked ordinary dressed, simply spoke little. But whenever he entered a room, the air became lighter. Not because he tried, not because he wanted attention. He was simply clear within himself. That clarity became an atmosphere around him like a thin, clean mist. It helped me understand a law I have observed my whole life. You do not attract what you want. You attract what you are. And what you are is not your title, your role, or your achievement. It is the inner frequency you hold each day. If there is urgency within you, others feel it before you speak. If there is fear within you, it shows not through your actions but through the way you breathe. If there is self-doubt, people may not name it, but they will treat you as if you are small. The world responds to you, not according to the identity you claim, but according to the energy you emit. This is why some people speak kindly, yet others still feel distant from them. And some say very little, yet their presence makes others feel safe. It is not the words. It is the field. The Christ pattern within you does not live only in thought or emotion. It lives in presence. When your mind is clear, your emotions steady, your body relaxed, your presence becomes clean. And that clarity is what makes the world adjust as it comes near you. You do not need to convince anyone of your worth. You only need to become the worth itself. Something interesting and very true is this. No one can approach you above the frequency you allow yourself to stand in. If you stand in scarcity, you attract relationships that reinforce scarcity. If you stand in fear, people sense your weak boundaries. If you stand in doubt, opportunity tiptoes around you with no place to enter. But when you stand in clarity, not prideful, not defensive, simply clear, everything changes. People who respect you move closer. People who do not match your field move away. Conversations lighten. Boundaries become natural. Decisions become accurate. You do not do anything. You simply stand correctly within yourself, and that correct presence is the strongest action you can bring into any situation. I once guided a woman named Helen, who always shrank in every relationship because she feared bothering others. Whenever she entered a room, she walked softly, spoke softly, tried to make herself as small as possible. This was not her true nature, but the residue of an old fear. As a result, people treated her as if she was unimportant. One day, I told her, Helen, you do not need to speak louder. You only need to stand straight in your true energy. She did not understand at first. But weeks later, she shared that for the first time in her life, she entered a meeting without shrinking. She did not speak much. She simply relaxed her shoulders, lifted her chin slightly, and breathed as if she had the right to be there. The result was immediate. People listened to her, more respected her, more, not because of words, but because her energy field had changed. This is the truth I want you to take to heart. You do not need to change who you are. You only need to stop lowering your frequency. Your natural energy is strong. Every person is born with a unique brightness. But over time, fear dims it, insecurity drags it down, doubt makes it cloudy. But the light never disappears. It is only covered. Remove a few layers and the light returns on its own. Presence cannot be faked. You can fake a smile. You can fake a sentence. But you cannot fake your energy field. And the beautiful thing is this. Your energy changes the moment your inner world changes even a little. One deep breath. One moment of claiming your worth. One decision to stand with yourself. One honest sentence instead of pleasing. These raise your frequency, and life responds to that frequency. Many try to change their life through action first, but action cannot exceed the vibration of your inner state. You must shift the inner state first, then action carries power. This is not philosophy. This is mechanism. When you enter any room, remember this. Your presence arrives before your words. Your presence is your introduction. Your presence is your silent declaration. I know who I am. And when you know who you are, the world knows how to meet you. When I look back at the whole journey you and I have walked through together, from the first pages about your original wholeness to the turning points where you began listening to your inner voice, then opening to new images, new emotions, new frequencies, I see something gentle and deep. You were never searching for your essence. You were simply removing what had covered it. I have spent my life observing the movements of the mind, the soul, and the spiritual laws people often forget in the rush of living. And the more I observe, the more I know this. A person does not need to become extraordinary to live a meaningful life. They only need to become honest with the light already within them. That light is not given after you prove yourself worthy. It is built into your original design. When I was young, I believed people needed more knowledge to change their lives. But later I realized this. What they need is not more knowledge, but remembering. Remembering they did not enter this world in lack. Remembering they were not thrown here without guidance. Remembering they are not walking in darkness. They are only used to closing their eyes because fear became familiar. The light has never disappeared. And when a person begins to open their eyes, not the eyes that look outward, but the eyes that look inward, everything changes. This change is not a loud explosion, not a radiant beam. It is like a drop of water falling into a quiet stream, expanding its ripples farther and farther. A small shift in awareness can begin a great transformation in life. I have seen it so often that I no longer doubt it. All peace begins within. You have walked through thoughts about belief, inner imagery, emotion, presence. But the most important thing I want you to keep is this. You always have the right to choose again. No matter how chaotic yesterday was, no matter how full of fear your mind once felt, no matter how many years you lived in self-doubt, no matter how often you shrank because you thought you were not enough, none of that can change the truth. You still carry within you the sacred pattern of peace, meaning, and clarity. No pain is large enough to erase it. No failure strong enough to remove it. No memory heavy enough to hide it forever. I want you to know this. You are not a project to be fixed. You are a truth to be remembered. Many think they must become excellent to be at peace. But peace does not come from achievement. Peace comes from acknowledgement, from saying to yourself, I will not carry the old story anymore. When you put down the old story, you no longer have to fit into the old role. You return to your true shape, not dramatic, not forced, but natural as breath. I have met people who came to me with heavy eyes, convinced their life was laid off rhythm out of chances. But when they remembered, even for one moment, that they still hold the power to choose their direction, I saw light return to their eyes. Not the light of excitement, but the light of knowing. The light of someone who realizes they are not being pushed by life, but are beginning to lead it. This is where healing and maturity meet. You no longer wait for circumstances to change. You change first from within, and circumstances follow like a shadow. Let me say this slowly. There is no life too lost to be brought back to brightness. There is no heart too tired to be renewed. There is no soul too wounded to remember itself. If you are carrying something heavy, place your hand on your chest. Feel that heartbeat. It is proof that life has not left you. Even when you have fallen, been disappointed, or walked through long sleepless nights, life still whispers you can return. And to return does not mean forcing yourself to be strong. It means gently opening the door for the light to come in. I do not hope you become someone else after this journey. I only hope you see what I've always seen in you even before you saw it. You have never been separate from your source. Separation is only an illusion created by years of living in fear. The Christ pattern, the sacred pattern, is not something you run toward. It is something you return to. And when you return, life does not become perfect, but it becomes clear. Clear enough for you to know your next step. Clear enough to see what no longer serves you. Clear enough to know you are not drifting. You are carrying light. Hold this as your closing truth. You do not need to become the light. You only need to stop covering the light you already have. And when you stop covering it, your light is not only enough for you. It is enough to guide those who happen to walk beside you. Not through preaching, not through effort, through presence. Because truth does not need volume to have power. Truth only needs to be lived. Move forward from here in that softness. No rushing, no forcing. Only step by step with the awareness that you have returned to what has never left you. Thank you for walking this whole journey with me. And thank you for daring to return to yourself.